snafu. It looks like there were some technical issues and we were not live up until this point. So hang tight, TJ. I'm going to introduce myself again. Hey, I'm Matt Mulholland. This is the Listen to This Bull live show. This is where you get to call in with your questions, put them in the comments, jump on the screen with us and ask any technical question at all, find out all of our secrets and how we do things. We'll answer it all. We want your questions so that we can find out what it is that you want to know. Today's show, I've got TJ Ware, another public adjuster with Paradise Claims. TJ is sitting with his wife, Jackie Ware. They seem to do everything together. You can't get one without the other. So Jackie must technically also be nominated for Best PA of the Year. Well, or you're only half nominated for Best PA of the Year. Maybe that's the real deal.
You know, really, it's kind of like the, what was it, the Benifer? Do you remember that?
Benifer?
The Ben Affleck. Yeah. Well, we're actually tacky. That's what it's
tacky. That's clever. I like that.
We're in it together. It works that way the best.
That's pretty funny.
Brad and Angelina too.
Yeah.
They did that.
Brangelina.
My wife and I had something like that going on. I don't really remember. Maybe it was Mashley. My wife's name is Ashley. We were Mashley. That was back in high school when Brangelina was a thing. So That's pretty funny. Tacky is hilarious. So TJ and I have both been nominated for the Public Adjuster of the Year Award with SVG, and so has another gentleman from Skipton Insurance called Jack Hanks. Jack is not able to be on the show with us today, but he promised he would be. He promised he would be on a future date. So we'll see if that actually happens.
We all love Jack. Yeah, it's cool that at least a lot of the people that are competing for these awards are all friends, and we enjoy each other professionally and personally. So it's a cool deal.
Yeah, that's great. I agree, actually, 100%. Most of us, when we learn about each other and we know what we do, we become a normal phone call for each other. You know, to collaborate. If I have a question, I tend to ask. Well, I call TJ pretty often, to be honest. I know you've done the same thing with me, and we've done the same thing for a lot of different PAs. So I've got a few questions already pouring in, which is great. Normally, it takes a little bit to get wound up here. TJ's also been nominated for Hurricane Hero, which is a new category for the Storm Ventures group. Did they really ever describe what that was fully?
Well, last year, Crest won it, so I don't know how new it is. Although it really came in, it came into my awareness this year because I guess we were stuck in the middle of a hurricane for 3 months.
Yeah.
So.
That might have been what it was. I didn't realize there was that. You know what, though? Right after Matt Behrens won Best PA last year, I remember going backstage and just hanging out with him, and I don't remember even paying attention to the rest of it. So maybe that's my fault. So anyway.
I do remember Logan's speech at the award ceremony, but I didn't recall which award it was for, but I think it was for the Hurricane Hero. Yeah.
Pate thinks that PA of the Year award is going to get heated.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You underestimate. Just
who do you believe should
pop
win
my neck.
Actually, I think it's a really tough one between Ryan Holiday, Matt Danskin, and Larry Bond for the Innovative Award. Now, that's the tough one.
Yeah, I agree. I met Larry Bond for the first time last night. I sat down with him at the SVG Atlanta event for their Road to Win the Storm. And we had a long discussion about how he's set up, and it is pretty cool. It's an interesting concept. I'm still not 100% on the legality of it for every state, but I'm not a lawyer, and they do have lawyers on staff, so I'm sure they're looking into it or have figured it out. Either way, it's an interesting concept. Larry Bond does the virtual PA for anybody that doesn't really know. I'm sorry,
Larry Bond.
No, I got the wrong guy. Larry Bond is the shrink wrap guy. Yeah.
Jason. Wait, no, I think you're right. Virtual PA was. Which one is it for the innovative? Which one is the most innovative? You're gonna have to bring up the listing.
Yeah.
Talking about Larry Bond, though, Larry Bond is Wrap Roof. He's out of Miami. They work mostly across the nation. And Larry Bond is one of my favorite people. Such a neat guy, hard worker. I mean, extremely hard worker and very smart in the way he's developing his business.
Yeah, I did talk quite a bit to Larry, and I get people's names backwards. I talked quite a bit to Larry yesterday. He was telling me about some of the claims that he's had an affiliate do in Georgia that might be getting me involved in. But there's definitely a place for shrink wrap, and what you're doing out in Louisiana is probably the right location for it versus a mundane normal storm on a simple asphalt residential roof. You wouldn't do it on that kind of a thing because you might as well just replace the roof when you're talking about the costs associated. Some of these things are pretty amazing. Do you know that they don't? He said that they don't do flat roofs.
Okay, so shrink is not best for flat roofs. That's how it works. I mean, I've seen it done on some flat roofs. Some different things can be done, but where the shrink wrap really shines is on your steep slope. When it comes to the flat stuff, my opinion is that nothing can beat a loose lay TPO.
I don't think they're going to let us get away without talking smack to each other today. It's really looking like they want to see these things go down. TJ,
I tell you that I encouraged Mulholland to not run a negative campaign this year. I think if he does, he'll probably pay for it.
I run a negative campaign against myself. All right. Olivia's going to do that for me. She's going to put my face on a turkey basting itself or something and put it online. She's killing me with this stuff. It's pretty funny, but yeah. TJ didn't want me to have fun, I guess.
Oh, you can have lots of fun.
No fun allowed.
No fun allowed. Who's going to pop for a VIP? I did get a VIP table for the award ceremony. Did you get one, TJ?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have one of those. I think we get a free bottle with it or something like that, too. We'll see what they do. That history museum is really cool.
It's super.
We were having a lot of fun with World War II Museum. It was great.
We had a VIP table last year, too, and I'm pretty sure you sat at it.
I did for about 20 minutes before you blew my mind. Talks of grandeur and trying to get me to, I don't know.
That's my specialty.
A lot of things. Yeah. I had a very long night with a lot, not very much sleep. Let's say that. Loose lay, TPO, and flat. Yeah, so we were talking about whether or not you would put shrink wrap on a flat roof. Pate's right. Loose lay on the flat roofs is a much better idea for a temporary repair solution.
Here's a simple way to put 6 mils versus 60 mils.
Yeah. Well, it's not only that, but the way that they vent out. So the way they overlap every 8 feet in order to allow airflow out, it would probably leak in between. The loose lay TPO makes a lot more sense. But I really got into detail with him last night, Larry Bond, about what type of plastic it is, what the polymers inside of it were. I was trying to convince him to actually turn it into some 3D printer filament because it had some interesting UV qualities. You could use it for an outdoor application, but that's my inner nerd showing.
Okay.
Well, that's how Larry's smart when it comes to the patents and the technologies and in the business, and he's out there installing. So that's why I really like Larry. Now, Danskin, I saw Danskin posted. I really like his system. And then I know I'm throwing somebody extra into one of these categories, but they have all been nominated for something.
I couldn't find the list.
Because Ryan Holiday, that has a potential to really change our industry, the roofing, restoration, public adjusting industries. The virtual PA with Jason Roberts has the potential to change the industry as well, because we all know there's some large underserved parts of that market.
Yeah. Jason's deal was really interesting. I spent a lot of time talking to him about that. Again, I think that there's definitely some legality questions for some states, but they do have some fairly sharp attorneys on staff. I talked to one of them last night, and they seem to seem to be aware of where all the possible pitfalls are and have adapted their program to suit. But I think that virtual PA is mostly set up for the simple claims, the small residentials that not every PA can get out to. So it's an interesting concept, and I think it meets a need.
We could either encourage Jason, or we could all get together and put a hit out on him. So I'm open to either option.
How much money do you think that would cost?
Not as much as you would think, especially when you cut it up about 6 ways.
I feel like you've looked into this before. All right. My wife says we know who's running the show. I think she was talking about me saying Mashley earlier. Hi, Ashley. We have some actual questions here. You ready to get technical on stuff?
No.
No? I just signed a townhome neighborhood with Horizon shingles throughout. Horizon's like the Atlas Chalet. Are you familiar with that? They'd like to file a claim to get it all replaced. We've done our initial inspection and have found widespread and sporadic wind damage. What would you recommend our next steps be? What do you think, TJ, before I kill it?
So you said this is a disco product?
It's a discontinued shingle. So it's a 3-tab with a faux laminate applique look to it, just like the Atlas Chalet. You familiar?
So I would just obviously, I would verify data loss. I try to find a good data loss for wind. I would make sure that it falls within the policy period, all of that stuff. And then I would encourage them to go ahead and file that claim, put an estimate for full replacement, and get some feedback from the insurance company and see if they're going to go down that road. We've found that discontinued product claims have become more and more challenging in a lot of states. There's some bad case law and there's some really tough policies out there when it comes to obsolete or discontinued products.
Yeah, I was about to actually say that last part there. A lot of the policies, and if this is a townhome neighborhood, it's actually going to be a commercial policy for the association on here. They may have an exclusion for the undamaged materials to be replaced just because there's a difference between the new materials they're using to replace the damaged materials, differences of size, color, shape, texture, discontinuation, obsolescence, all that fun stuff. So you want to get a copy of the policy. You probably want to have a public adjuster involved since it's an association or a commercial policy claim. And you want to verify that there isn't any ACV changes. A lot of the townhome and community association policies will have an age of the roof where that roof might become ACV only. And so you want to be careful or be wary of those. Know it up front before you file the claim. I recommend you find a good PA that you're comfortable with, send them a copy of this policy and start reviewing it to see if there's enough coverage. Sounds like you've got enough damages. Now you need to make sure there's enough coverages. So, all right. I'd like to answer this question immediately. I think I should win.
Well, I think I should win. I wasn't nominated. I think TJ should win.
I think Pate should win because he's nominated for everything. Somehow, I really want Pate to win the Best Dressed Award, go up on stage wearing nothing but sweatpants and a sweatshirt with a mustard stain on it and accept the award wearing that. That would be fantastic.
I actually bought myself some pants today with an elastic band around the ankles because Pate said they were cool. So I'm going to test them out and see.
Pate, sweatsuit's great again.
That should be a hat.
Yeah. I got a good question here. I think I spent too much time running files as a PA/contractor/assignee and not enough time unlocking SVG achievements like you cool kids. That's not a question.
Why are these questions anonymous?
That's a good question because they're supposed I thought I had checked.
Mr.
Couldn't do that. So I'm wondering if this is a PA, a contractor, or an assignee. It is anonymous. If you know who you are, I hope you know your own name. Please notify us of what that is. We spend too much time arguing theoretical. It can't be repaired. Insurers don't deal in theoretical. They deal with documented. If they write repairs, document a failed repair attempt, tarp it, and have the insured submit a sworn proof of loss and a 60-day demand letter through a PA. The 60-day demand letter is something that's in Georgia and probably other states, but not every state has the same laws on that. Do you want to add anything to that? It wasn't exactly a question. I probably should have read it before I posted it up there.
Don't you vet these things? Josh, are you looking for a job?
Yeah, I don't.
So I would say that if it's not a discontinued product, absolutely you should document the unrepairable nature of that product. Totally agree with that one. And then
I'll go back to it so you can keep reading. That was an interesting
and then
statement.
It's good in Louisiana. We're relying heavily on a proof of loss and a demand for payment because we have good payment statutes there.
So their payment statute was actually 30 days in Louisiana, right? But they upped it to 60 because of the amount of damages. Is that what it was?
Yeah, because insurance companies have a strong lobby or something.
How are things going in Louisiana? Things doing well? How are things going in Louisiana? It's Louisiana.
Oh, you thought I didn't hear your question.
Yeah.
They're good, and it's brutal. It's been the busiest 3 or 4 months, 3 months or so of my life.
Yeah, it's tough going to a place like that right after a major event and just getting stuck there. It's something that I've done a few times now, and it's my least favorite thing as a PA. Sometimes you go out there and there's just so many people that need you and you have a hard time saying no. So you end up taking on a ton of claims and just completely killing yourself.
I have learned a lot.
So my joggers are
Alexander
green.
Wang.
I should get some love.
I'm not going to do that, Peyton. He's going to have to do that for us, I think. Maybe he can tell us what that is. I could just pull you on, Peyton. You can tell us. Maybe.
I have those.
Oh, I lost somebody in the wings. Matthew Danskin. I had him on the show just the other day, by the way. My wife is planning to dress me for the awards ceremony, so maybe I can get a nomination next year for best dress. Your wife has to be the one dressing you to make this work.
Yeah.
Do you dress him, Jackie? Are you the one that's putting him in those suits?
Yeah, I'm the dresser.
You're the one that's picking the suits? Is it a... Where are you finding those? Dude, you are wearing very interesting garments to some of these events.
Well, it didn't get me nominated for best dress.
Didn't work at all. It didn't work at all. That's a shame, though. You actually stood out quite a bit. Pate gets it, and he's wearing
sweats,
elastic waistbands.
What are you going to do?
All right, I've got someone that's I can pull onto the show named Weston Link. He's a PA that works with a company called ClaimBot. That's another interesting technology-based system that seems to be up and coming in the Georgia market. He's got a few technical questions that he said that he was going to ask us. So I hope he's ready.
All right.
Weston, how you doing, bud?
I'm great. How are y'all doing?
I'm pretty good. Doing pretty good.
I'm in a truck as usual, so hopefully my internet's good enough to hold on to this video.
Well, it's doing well so far. So what kind of questions you got?
So many. So first, I'm actually not a PA. So the way that ClaimBot works essentially is Jen Campbell with Penny's Public Adjusting is what I would call my PA. And so she is actually the lead PA for ClaimBot right now. And so we get our leads and she quarterbacks them. I direct all the operations in the field. So I handle all the adjustments, the inspections. We use Company Cam heavily. Obviously love those guys to kind of show her the damages that we've seen. And a lot of times we'll do like a virtual PA adjustment if we have to, depending on if the adjuster is being amicable or not. So all this takes place in our little state of Georgia right here. So
are you doing the virtual PA through Jason and the actual virtual PA system, or your own version of that with ClaimBot?
Right?
Yep. So we use Facebook Messenger or FaceTime or whatever it is. As long as I can get Jen's face in front of someone else's face, she's usually pretty formidable. So I might be on the roof and I'm holding the phone and we're walking through everything. and so far it's actually worked out pretty well. This goes back to kind of serving or kind of putting yourself out there in the underserved markets is kind of our intention. So it sounds like we need to do some collaboration with this other PA on what he's got going.
Yeah, maybe. Sounds like you guys had the same idea at the same time, basically.
So I would say that in certain states like Georgia, things like this may be more acceptable, whereas obviously in other states, like with strong UPA laws, I could see some potential complications.
And we're working through some of that stuff now. I mean, at this point, the company's so fledgling that it's one of those things that's in the back of your head, but not a current present danger.
Yeah. Okay. So you got questions? Hit us.
So this kind of goes back to Josh Friedman. He kind of took what I was going to say. This repairability argument is, for some reason, this storm season, it's like a switch flips and everyone says, we're not doing replacements anymore. We're going to repair everything. And so what is the best standard of practice here? I'm on a roof. Let's say I'm on a 3-tab. It's got wind damage. I'm with an adjuster, and I've got my contractor and myself who's got, lots of experience sitting here saying, hey, this is not repairable in our opinion. And they're going to issue for a repair anyway. Is what Josh said, is that kind of the standard for when an adjuster wants to just issue a repair as opposed to a replacement? I mean, obviously, we're going to attempt to repair. I spent a lot of time arguing with these guys, and it's fruitless. So what's the best way to handle this?
I would say sending in a demand or a proof of loss doesn't mean anything. They can just say no. They can ignore you. They don't have to do it. I mean, that's like a precursor if your customer wants to file suit. But in the end, if it's a $18,000 claim, is anybody going to court over this? Probably not. To be honest with you, a lot of people, what I've seen happen, and I think Georgia has some appraisal law issues, but oftentimes you'll see a claim like that go into appraisal in a lot of states.
Okay.
So what Josh had said earlier was to attempt to repair as a contractor and document that the repair failed and send that documentation in. And the weird thing about doing that is sometimes the carrier just says our position stands or we don't agree. I oftentimes will invite them to bring out their own contractor to attempt to repair in those scenarios, because an adjuster has no business determining whether or not something is repairable when a contractor says it isn't.
Right.
How would an adjuster know more than a contractor when it comes to whether or not a shingle is repairable? What kind of a test did they do? Did they do any kind of assessment, and how did they go about doing it? There's this brittleness test idea that's out there, and there's no real brittleness test, but everybody knows what you're talking about when you say it. So when I say brittleness test, you know what I'm talking about. And people are taking a shingle and they're lifting it to see if it's pliable. So they try to lift it to the point where the nail is visible so you could strike it with a hammer. But that's just one aspect of repairability. When you take a shingle out, you have to pry the nails out of multiple shingles. And if those nails are ring shank or they are especially long, or depending on what substrate they're actually driven into, they might not come out very easily. And you could rip the shingle up off the nail instead of pulling the nail out of the shingle. Now you've damaged the shingles above the one you're pulling out. That isn't tested with a brittle test. When you break the seal on it, is matting transfer caused? Can you break the seal cleanly? So is the seal so weak that it won't reestablish itself? There's a lot of questions for repairability. An adjuster can't answer that.
So we bring up these questions, exactly what you're saying. Brittleness seems to be their level of education is, well, we're going to do a Hague brittleness test or whatever.
It doesn't have one, by the way.
Well, and my first question is, is that the industry standard widely accepted test, which there isn't one. So the issue is, you and I, we may know these things, and I convey this to an adjuster, and he still says, I don't care. What's next?
I'm telling you, in a lot of states, an appraisal demand, because guess what? That takes it out of that adjuster's hand, and now it puts it in the hands of a third-party appraiser. There's certain things I don't love about appraisal, and we could go on and on about those things. And there's certain states where appraisal is less enforceable, I think. But essentially, in most of the states that I work in, those are the kinds of claims, those are the situations and scenarios that go to appraisal.
Yeah, TJ is right for most states where appraisal isn't a broken system. Since you're in a broken system state, Georgia, let's talk about what you would do for your claim. The next step really is to establish that you're right. You need documentation. So if you haven't provided any real solid evidence that you haven't proven the loss, so establish that evidence. Do an attempted repair, record the whole thing, send in every piece of evidence on why it's not repairable, put in writing as the contractor exactly why you don't believe it's repairable. Have all of that out there so that if they come back and say we disagree, they have to substantiate that. You can ask them to substantiate it. Send out an engineer if they want. Ask them to allow you to prove the loss. If they don't go back out with you to investigate by bringing out a contractor of their own to attempt to repair or sending out an engineer, then they're not fully investigating the loss, and they're not even allowing the insured or the insured's people or their representatives or their contractor to help prove the loss on their behalf. So the carrier isn't acting appropriately. If you point out the fact that they aren't allowing the insured to prove the loss, it's very apparent that they're acting unfairly. You could go to the Department of Insurance for whatever state you're in and let them know that they're not allowing the insured to prove the loss.
So
I've done that in the past, and it has led to the Department of Insurance forcing the carrier to send out their own contractor to attempt to repair, and things went well from there.
Matt, do we have a 25% rule in Georgia?
no.
There's no caps in Georgia. No. For building code. No, there's nothing. If there's substantial structural damage beyond 50% of the replacement cost, that's something that we have, but it has to be structural damage.
Because sometimes we will use some documentation showing that rather than a 1-to-1 repair ratio on damaged shingles, we would use a 3-to-1 or even a 5-to-1. And there is documentation on that, which in a 25% rule state can oftentimes get you over that threshold for a full re-roof.
That's absolutely true. Actually, if you do an attempted repair, especially if they're on site with you and you show them that, I pulled this one out and now these 3 are damaged. Well, now, and then you start replacing those in front of them and it damages more. And then you start replacing those in front of them until you get to the point where you're like, should I just stop? Or do you want me to keep going? And it might be a 30-minute long attempted repair.
Right.
But ultimately it will prove the point. I've blown adjusters' minds doing that, where the contractor is just having to continue to replace. And should we go ahead and do that now? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that now. And then I have the contractor continue that process. We've done that on large community association claims, and it's been very powerful. And at some point they get to a 1-to-7, 1-to-8 ratio, and that amount makes it more expensive to replace individual shingles than it is to replace the entire roof.
Right.
I'm going to assume that one of the issues that you run into, though, is that the adjuster is unwilling to come out there and entertain more of these arguments, and they're also unwilling to send a third party out there, and they just stand on their decision.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the issues that we run into is it seems like they're pretty willing to send an engineer, but when 10 out of 10 engineers come out and say this is repairable, we have an issue. And if I've got myself, multiple contractors, our own engineers saying, hey, this is not repairable, and then all of a sudden it lives and dies with some engineer out of state who just got paid to come down, this is really frustrating. Now, we've attempted repairs in front of adjusters. We've attempted repairs in front of engineers. And these engineers in particular will come out, and I will get in some real heated arguments with them. Because even most of them, around here at least, are totally unqualified to be evaluating a roofing system. And it seems that a lot of these claims die with that engineer report, regardless of what we do past that point. We do refer pretty much everyone at that point over to Huggins, because I don't know what else we could do past that. Clearly our opinion stands and their opinion stands, and I feel like we hit a stalemate unless there's something else we can do on our end that I just don't know of.
Sometimes they just let it become a stalemate, and the carrier invites you to seek out whatever dispute resolution is available in the policy. They might actually say those exact terms. They do to me all the time. and that might just be the next step for you. But I always like to point out to the engineer that if they're going to be the ones evaluating whether something is repairable over what the contractor said, then they have to be willing to take on the liability of the warranty. And I ask them if they're willing to do that, and they always say no, obviously. Right. This is why I really like to have them bring out their own contractor. That engineer, that adjuster, if you're doing it in front of them yourself, a lot of times they think that you're damaging the shingles on purpose. If you've got a roofing crew that you can bring out that is clearly, these are not a roof salesman, these are not the owner of the company, this is a real legitimate roofing crew. If you could have them do the attempted repair in front of them, that's usually a lot better. But ultimately, it's way better to have them bring out their own. Way better. And there's always going to be a situation where they act so inappropriately and they're not willing to change, and you have to seek out an attorney. And it looks like you're going to Remington Huggins with Huggins Law Firm when you said Huggins.
Yep. Well, and I think we'll move into the direction of inviting them to bring their own contractor out. I think that's a good idea. It's not something that we've done so far.
When I invite out a carrier contractor, I got another question that ties to this, so I'm going to interrupt you here. Do you request a preferred vendor that you've worked with in the past and know to be reasonable, or the carrier sends out a lot of riffraff when they send out a contractor? I'll be honest, I do not specify who I want them to send out. I said invite out whoever you want. I've had a roofer go out and with a spatula go elbow deep under shingles in a roof to pry out a nail with a spatula. And of course it caused damage. Of course it did. So I'm okay if they send out riffraff. That's the guy that they chose.
It's true.
Anyway. Did that answer your questions?
I think it did. This is just a recurring theme for us, and it's frustrating. It prolongs the claim. Customers get frustrated. Everyone does. And so we're looking for the best, most efficient route to get to the end of this conversation. And I think what you're saying is right. If it's their own contractor and they fail that test, then at that point,
how can they say that the contractor did a bad job or the contractor did it on purpose when they're the ones that sent it out?
Right. And that's another thing that we get bringing out our own contractors is, well, you didn't do that repair right from an adjuster.
They don't know what they're talking about, and it makes it very apparent. So hopefully that gave you something new to do and try, and you can report back to us pretty soon. Yeah. Anything to add, TJ?
I'll let you know.
I'm just saying, like he said, I agree. These are the tactics and the best avenue that you're looking for. But unfortunately, as with so many of these issues, there's no silver bullet. And the reason is we're dealing with other people on the other end of this, people that have a different agenda from us, and indemnifying the client has very little to do with their agenda. And so unfortunately, that's why we're stuck in a lot of these situations and scenarios.
Right.
All right, Weston, thanks a lot, man.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.
Frank posted this, and they sold the insured a replacement cost policy, stand on replacement and not repair.
And I was going to say, in a lot of cases, I definitely make that argument. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone with some building consultants and some adjusters the day before yesterday with Sedgwick, and we had a large commercial metal roof, like 1,300 squares. It's damaged all the way across it, and their prescriptive resolution method was to coat the roof. And I said, guys, this is an RCV policy. An RCV policy is a new for old policy. So there's no way that would indemnify our client. Whose idea was it to come up with a coating when all of the metal is damaged? Of course, they were all just silent. They wouldn't say anything. And at the end of it,
exact same thing happened just recently.
They said, okay, we'll go back to the carrier on Monday and ask for a full replacement. That's what Sedgwick said.
Actually, this is Sedgwick as well, so that actually makes sense. But they were offering a coating as a compromise, even though there's no cosmetic damage exclusion in this.
Maybe an ACV policy. Let's talk about something like that. On an RCV policy, absolutely not.
Well, just to bring it back to the RCV deal, the RCV policies still have repair or replacement as an option for the carrier, whichever is cheaper. That is still written into an RCV policy. But the repair still has to be to code. It still has to bring them back to a pre-damaged condition. If a repair can't do that, then a repair isn't possible.
When I say new for old, of course, I mean the products that are used. You know,
Sure.
you have to have a new product replacing that damaged product, and so
it has to be in new condition without any age to it. So when we've actually had a lot of battles over the years about whether or not replacement cost meant replacing with a new shingle, and what the term new meant is there's a company called Discontinued Materials Inc. You heard of them?
No, but I assume it's like a boneyard service.
It's like a boneyard service. So this company warehouses discontinued materials, discontinued shingles, and they're shipped from their warehouse not in their original packaging.
Right.
So the question that we always had was, is that new? It was pre-owned by somebody, even if it was never installed. So a car that is sold pre-owned means that there was somebody that was on the original title. There's an exchange of ownership, even if it was never driven, even if it's still only got 15 miles on it, original from the factory. It's still considered pre-owned if there was somebody else on the title. There's a change of hands of ownership. So even if it's never been installed, the real question is it new? Warehouse materials have age to them, and over a longevity of a material, it's going to change its characteristics. Sure. Especially with asphalt shingles, the granules will get loose. We actually got some donor reports recently that really talked about the sealant failures due to the long-term warehousing of materials. But
makes sense.
Anyway.
Thank you.
I don't want them there. I don't want them there to nitpick. I don't want them there to nitpick. I'm not going to put a voice on them. I want the contractor to attempt. I want the failure documented. I want a tarp installed to expand the number of damage for the bean counters. Are you saying that you're installing tarps in an attempt to cause more damage? Are you actually putting that in writing on a recorded show? Let me hide that immediately.
I will tell you this. If you'll tarp up and over the ridge, see, it has a better chance of shedding water.
The difference between vandalism and accidental damage is intent. If you intend to cause damage by doing something,
my only attempt is to preserve the property.
Yeah. If you have to go up and over the ridge because that's the only way, I understand. You have to preserve the property from further damage, make reasonable repairs. Man. All right, I got somebody else in here. Dustin King. Dustin, unmute yourself before I put you on. Dustin is actually a tech genius, and he's behind some of the CRM software that we're currently using, ClaimsForce. But he was also doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes technical stuff for RoofCon, and is probably in about 50,000 other technical things because he cannot seem to focus on one thing. And that's me. He needs to focus on me. I'm going to pull him on real quick. Let's see what kind of question he comes up with. Hey, Dustin, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. What do you got for us?
Well, I'm just curious what type of recommendations you guys might have that could help the APA on a larger scale with tracking fraud on a larger setup, or what you guys are seeing as the first indications that there might be something wrong.
I forgot about this, but Dustin does a lot of the tech stuff for the APA, which both TJ and I are members of, but TJ is one of their, what do they call you?
A board advisor. And I'll tell you, we've gotten a lot of exposure to the inner workings of the organization out on the front lines in Louisiana. And there's no doubt that we need to determine some better ways to both vet these claims of fraud, which is very challenging to prove fraud. And fraud is very, very rare, even within all of these engineer complaints or adjuster complaints. Actual fraud, documentable fraud is very rare, and it's hard to prove. And we do need some intent there, which is also hard to improve. But there's got to be a way to catalog the database, because I know a lot of people, contractors, PAs, attorneys, they are gathering this information. But as with many things, the difficulty is in organizing that information in a way that it can be interpolated and understood. And somebody like Mulholland is a great person, because I think he does a lot of that internally with adjusters and claims in Georgia.
Yeah, we do. I keep going back to the original thought that you just had, that that fraud is really hard to prove. There's so many cases I've called Doug on, and other members of the APA, just asking if it's fraud. It's such a hard to define term sometimes. When is fraud committed? Do you have any idea?
There has to be an intent. Anytime that information is changed or falsified for financial gain. Okay, so there has to be that incentive and that intent to do this for financial gain. The problem we run into is that when we're dealing with experts such as engineers, they can easily say, in my opinion this, in my opinion that. That will not meet the bar or the threshold to prove fraud. But in a case of somebody changing or modifying a report afterwards, especially if it's another party, maybe a manager in an engineering firm or something like that, modifying a report, changing the findings or opinion of the engineer in the field, that is, and has been in the past, proven to constitute fraud.
Oh, well, we lost him. That's okay. He got his question out. So proving intent is a very difficult thing to do. You have to basically get them to admit it. And I don't think the APA has enough spotlights or dark, small rooms without any windows to interrogate these people and really get them to sign off on some weird confession. I totally did that on purpose. There he is.
Listen, man, here's what I think.
Hey.
I think we're looking for defectors, all right? So you carrier engineers that are out there watching this show, and your conscience has gotten to you, and your New Year's resolution is going to be to leave the dark side and come over here, please get in touch with us. We will help you expose their secrets, and we'll even try to get you some sort of what do they call it when they don't amnesty? No, what is it when they don't prosecute? They agree not to prosecute.
Whistleblower agreement kind of a deal.
There's like a protection where the prosecutors won't prosecute. I forgot the term for it, but I'm sure there's something
like that. Right? That sounds right. Jackie's smarter than you think. It's got to be amnesty.
Yeah, but it's not.
I don't know what it is either. All right. So that's an interesting idea. So, and we promise, if you come over from the dark side, we won't say anything about tarping in intent to cause more damage. It's not what we're about. That was a one-time.
And I could go on all day about the APA. I'm pretty passionate about it. I've seen a lot of things firsthand. And a lot of people ask me, I've even had people recently tell me, hey, man, I was a member of the APA for a while and I left because I just didn't see anything being accomplished. And that's because they've misunderstood the entire plan and directive of the APA. And essentially, we are laying a foundation and a groundwork. I know it's working because I was there personally when the Calcasieu District Attorney announced that they would be prosecuting criminal fraud that's perpetrated by insurance carriers and their agents. And that's one of the first times that a government official, an elected official, has come out and publicly stated such. And I think it's very important. I also met with the Lieutenant Governor of Louisiana, as well as some of the local assistant district attorneys in Calcasieu Parish, which is where Lake Charles is located. They've become friends of mine. Some of them are clients of mine. They're very in tune with carrier side fraud now that we have informed them. And they're excited. They're excited to assist in prosecution of some of those bad actors. So things are really happening and changing, but it's not overnight.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Dustin? I feel like we really don't have any way of helping your side of things for that, unless there's just a better way for more people to get more information to you. Data mining a lot of this is probably key for what it is that you're trying to do.
Agreed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Data mining is key, but more importantly, having all parties share as much information as possible. The thing I've noticed is, you're working with an adjuster that's talking with the roofer, the PA, the appraiser, go on down the roof, go down the list, and knowing, being able to have, that's part of the APA I'm helping to build, is to be able to talk about, this adjuster has talked to all these different mediums and what are the issues. Like you guys said, it's so hard to define that fraud, and having more people in the community, so to speak, report that and share those data points will allow us to be able to help as far as the technology side goes.
And then I think there'll have to be some sort of efficient vetting committee that could be made up of professional members or board members, a vetting committee that would go through and review some of this information. I have people tell me all the time that they emailed information to the APA about engineers and things like that, and they never heard anything back. And so that's something that can be addressed within the organization. I know that there are so many things that are still being formulated and set up and worked on, and there can always be improvements, especially when we're trying to do such an incredible thing and a new thing and a difficult thing as the APA is doing. But at some point, we've got to be able to intake that information, process it, vet it, and then decide whether or not to move forward.
I wonder if some kind of an AI setup is really the key for this, because there's so much information and so much data. Every engineer report is loaded with stuff. There are going to be boilerplates that are used, which is fine, but somebody left me a note in my door on a it looks like a popsicle stick, and it says, "You suck." I just noticed it.
Also,
my team.
This is what people need to understand, as we're all APA members here, so we all understand and agree, but everyone else needs to understand that the first few cases where we really get behind it and we try to have a carrier representative prosecuted, legally prosecuted, criminally prosecuted, it's going to have to be a really tight case. It's not going to be one of these ambiguous situations. So until we find that perfect poster child, we're going to have to keep building the organization and lobbying attorneys general and spreading awareness, because we've got to make sure that once we do take that step, we're successful in getting that criminal prosecution.
All right, Dustin, anything else for us?
That's it. Thanks, guys. You've been awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man. Take care.
Thanks.
I really like the mission of the APA. I wonder how long it's going to be before we have enough data to actually make major moves to improve the system. It's a worthwhile long-term goal, but it is a lot longer than I think most people really want.
I expect some developments. I think probably Hurricane Laura is going to be the battleground. I really do. And I think that some significant developments will happen probably over the next 12 months in Louisiana. That's my expectation.
Yeah. Louisiana is perfect for a lot of that stuff. You're absolutely right.
It is.
The last time was in Sandy, so it's ripe for it in that kind of an environment.
Yes, and there are the connections there with the organization that are going to be important in furthering our agenda.
That's true. That's true. And you have a great lieutenant governor set up in there already too. So you have somebody in your court. All right, next question. I have a question from my fellow PAs. Hardwood flooring and a replacement cost value policy. Does the insurer have the right to pay to sand and refinish? I like this question. If so, what policy language invalidates the replacement cost coverage in favor of actual cash value repairs? Go for it, TJ.
Well, actually, a few moments ago, you had mentioned that a lot of policies do say that the carrier can choose to repair or replace when there is damage. So I think it would depend on if it's just damage to the finish of the flooring, then I would say that it would be acceptable to have that discussion, especially since a lot of that hardwood flooring is finish in place product. Is that like, kind, and quality? that's up for debate. I could see that potentially. If there is water, especially Cat 2 or Cat 3 water that's penetrated the system that exists underneath the flooring or something like that, then I would say obviously it has to come out and be relayed. But if it's just damage to the finish, can they replace the finish?
I honestly wasn't even thinking about just damage to the finish. That makes sense to replace the finish. There, you could take it pretty far. Are we assuming hardwood floors for this? I'm assuming hardwood floors.
Hardwood flooring.
All right, so hardwood flooring that is stained and piled in place. They're so thick. They're 3/4 of an inch, and they can be sanded and refinished a certain number of times. So when you purchase hardwood floor, you can refinish it in different colors. Let's say it's 6 times. I don't know what the actual amount is. If you sand and refinish it as an insurance carrier, and now they only have 5 more times that they can sand and refinish it, is that really true indemnity? Right. It isn't really, but it's also a ridiculous thing for someone to make that argument. So if they're replacing some of the floor, and I think that's probably what this question really is about. Are they replacing some of the floor, but not all of it, and sand and finishing the rest of it? I don't think that that is a good way to go about doing things. Most hardwood floors have a tongue and a groove, and the nails go through that area. In order to take out a portion of the floor, you have to cut the tongues off, and then you'd have to face nail the stuff that goes in. Even if you went from one end of the room to the other, going a long ways with the wood, you'd still have one course of it where the tongues have to be cut off. Is that structurally as strong of a floor as it was with the tongues intact? I don't think it is. I don't like the idea of tearing out areas of a floor and then sand and finishing. I don't think that that really is indemnification in any manner. But if it takes you 2 years to argue that with the carrier in a state that you're not going to have appraisal as an option or going to an attorney, maybe it's better for the insured. It's in their best interest to allow that kind of a thing. Depends on the state that you're in, I guess. What do you think, TJ?
I'm mostly in agreement, because when that hardwood floor is installed, also the installer butts those pieces together with a certain amount of force. What's important is that the force that he uses is fairly uniform across the entire floor. And so when you have 2 different installers installing 2 different materials at a different time, there is a big potential there for issues. And there could be the development of a lack of a reasonably uniform appearance throughout the flooring system.
Yeah.
Also, when we go down the argument, like you said, let's say it can be sanded and refinished 5 times, and now there's only 4 left. I would never say that argument's not valid. Okay, that
that's
if you
not
want
what I meant by ridiculous. I agree with you.
Black and white, there is some validity to that argument. But then let's also say you're putting a new comp roof on a house, okay, and you say, hey, the OSB has all these holes in it now that it didn't have before. So fine, you get a redeck and you pull that OSB off, then you say, wait, the roof trusses, now they have all of these extra nail holes in them.
You can take it really far.
You can take it forever, until you go to policy limits. And do we believe that that's the best way to pursue every claim? Probably not.
I don't think it's in the insured's best interest most of the time to leave them in a position where they're going to have half their roof rebuilt and then they're in a position where they're such a high risk as an insured that their rates are going to increase dramatically. It's not worth going through a lot of that kind of a headache.
Also, over time, we have to realize that our ability to argue these points for the policyholders is the reason that these policies now have stronger exclusions, stronger verbiage. These guys are always going to try to get ahead. And what we're seeing now is exclusions and policies that are written so rock solid in favor of the carrier. I was involved in a group message yesterday with some other prominent public adjusters and appraisers, and it was about an exclusion. It was a Chubb policy. It was a Chubb policy with it would appear to be a cosmetic or damage exclusion, but it really isn't. It's more than that. It's a complete and total hail exclusion, essentially, because it says that the hail, it will not be covered unless it penetrated the material and allowed the intrusion of water immediately after the incident. Whereas some policies will say, oh, that affected its water functioning capability over time.
Yeah. So it's basically a seepage exclusion in the way that it's written in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would exclude that because of the overtime part, but essentially it's a rock solid exclusion for hail damage to this roofing system. Even if you can prove it's functional, it still excludes that. And what we're seeing these policies that are so terrible for so many carriers.
That's interesting. I think I've seen something similar to that recently. I do want to bring us back real quick to the unreasonable comment that I made for the flooring. Most policies have in the how we pay for a covered loss section, they'll say that they will pay for the reasonable cost or the reasonable repairs or something like that. They'll actually use the term reasonable in order to keep us from going as far as you possibly can with some of these things. So can I see that real quick? This is funny. Somebody stuck this in my door. You probably can't read it, but it says, "You suck." And they just stuck it right in there just to mess with me while I'm on camera. Get messed up. Schmucks. My team is great. Pate, who would be a good person in the industry for me to hire to bring under my wing and multiply myself? He's looking for a clone.
Well,
what do you think?
Pate's good at multiplying himself. Hell, he has kids 2 at a time half the time.
Yeah, he just had a kid. That's pretty funny.
It's got to really. Oh my goodness, I don't know. That's a really interesting concept.
What? Duplicating himself by having kids?
Somebody to bring under his wing and multiply himself. I don't know very many people personally that could keep up with Pate.
I would get mad. I think Pate's looking for someone to. I don't know what he's actually wanting. Actually, maybe he's alluding to something. Maybe I should just. Wonder if he's available to jump on and answer or ask his question a little bit better. Hang on a second. How do I do this?
Bring under my wing and multiply myself.
I don't know what that's about. Yeah, here we go.
Because Mulholland's an angry person.
I'm not an angry person. I just sent him an invite in. If he's able to get on, he can jump on and ask him himself. All right. Isn't that right to repair? Right to repair is different than payment under replacement cost benefits. It wouldn't be the same dimension. So right to repair is different. Right to repair means that the carrier has the right to make repairs in lieu of paying the insured to hire someone to make the repairs. So that is a very different thing than what we were describing. I'm talking about under how we pay for a cover loss, we will pay for the least of the following: repair of the damaged part of the dwelling, replacement of the damaged part of the dwelling, replacement of the dwelling, whatever is the cheapest. Those kinds of things is what I was describing. Won't be the same dimensions after sand down. It's not a lot, but it's something. We have some claims where a TPO system is hit by hail. The membrane isn't damaged, but the ISO board underneath it is. There's minute tears and abrasions in it that do reduce the R value of the ISO board by a small amount of refraction, 0.4% maybe, enough that an engineer is willing to put in writing that it is marginal or not functional damage. But if they can quantify it at all, then it meets the definition of damage in the policy.
Here's what I tell people all the time. If you sustain a loss one day after your policy expires, the insurance company is going to be very black and white about it. And so I think it's okay for us, as him and Mike both said, I think it's okay for us to be black and white in our arguments when it comes to indemnifying our clients.
Olivia, no. No, you cannot quit here and go work for Pate. No, no, Pate, I will hurt you if you hire Olivia. She's mine.
I think the team is trying to
tell me something.
This call.
No, I see. That's what that was about. Matt would get mad. That was based on Olivia's comment. Now I get it.
Back to the question.
Now I get it.
Yeah, it's reasonable for us to be very black and white when it comes to indemnification, and it's up to us to decide where that line ends and begins. And much of this is a very gray area that's open to the interpretation of many people, ultimately a jury of our peers. And, you know, this case law and precedent really goes state by state, as insurance is typically something that is handled by state. So there's a lot of different answers out there depending on legal precedent and case law. But I think it's okay to argue for indemnification in a very black and white way.
I agree. And if the language in the policy says reasonable, and who gets to determine when it's reasonable? So I think that term is subjective to the situation. And if you can argue that it's reasonable and make a compelling argument, then it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and ultimately, as you said, who gets to decide? In my head, it's always a jury. It's always a jury in my head, because ultimately that is who gets to decide in these cases and in these disputes.
Right. So in your household, who gets to decide?
And sometimes we're wrong. So, you know, sometimes juries get it wrong, right? But that's just the way it is. That's a system that we have. It can be very nuanced. So we have to try to do the very best that we can, make compelling arguments, and they don't always come out the way that we want them to come out, but sometimes they do.
Well, that's true. And always having a good attorney that you work with in your market is a good idea. Find somebody that's in that state and knows that state's laws really well. I've found that if you go to an out-of-state attorney, sometimes it makes things very, very difficult. Even if they are barred in your state,
True, right? They don't even know the case law or the precedent there. I think that a lot of attorneys would tell you that some of the bad case law that we have out there is because an attorney tried the wrong case, or an attorney failed to represent that case or those facts well, and then we ended up with bad case law because of it.
In Georgia, we have a very famous case where the attorney and the claimant didn't even show up to the Georgia Supreme Court. And of course, it went in all states' favor. So go figure. All right. It has been a full hour, and I'm out of questions on here. This is new. Normally, we go over by like an extra half hour. There's got to be one more question from somebody. Olivia, you cannot leave us.
I wasn't gonna leave.
I'm glad you came back.
I wasn't going to leave.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to be.
Okay. I mean, Pate's really cool and all, but
we're looking forward to the next couple of months of that Olivia's going to be posting. So looking forward
did you
to
hear that? She says she's looking forward to the next couple of months and what it is that you're going to be posting.
I think I'm going to connect. I'm going to connect with Olivia here. Olivia, if you need supplemental income, let's discuss this.
Did you hear that?
I'm always down.
Yeah.
Let me know.
All right, I'm getting TJ off of this right now immediately. I'm going to block him from tempting things.
Down.
All right. Well, okay. I have one last question for you. Did you eat all that chili?
Yes, I ate all of it that night. There was no leftover.
We gave some
all of it out that night too. Holy crap! There was so much chilies and hot and peppers.
We feed like a
million.
Just
kept adding.
Well, that's real chili here in Texas. It has to have a lot of peppers. Okay, so my father-in-law taught me how to make that chili. And so Jackie grew up eating like that. And she said when they were kids, they would have to put Vaseline all around their lips and mouth before they ate the chili.
From burning, because it would burn our mouths.
Just their mouths, of course. Sure. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It's always better the next day. We did give some away to some friends though, so it was.
Yeah, I mean, I make a pretty good chili, but it's not as spicy as the one that you make.
No, I bet
I put chocolate powder in mine to bring out some interesting depth. It would be cool to see if you even taste that if we put it in yours. I don't think you taste anything in yours except just pure fire.
Mostly
Yeah.
habanero. You habanero.
Yeah. Do you add sour cream?
No.
Not usually.
That's-
Some people do. I think sour cream will cut a little bit of that heat though if you use it.
Yeah. Do your kids eat it too?
Oh yeah.
All of them?
Mhm.
Yeah.
As is? Did you make a separate pot for them that was less hot?
I do make a kid spot sometimes.
Okay.
My kids eat pretty spicy food though. Down here,
Oh.
we eat a lot of Mexican food, so we like
Yeah.
spicy stuff. The baby eats salsa probably more than grown men. So
Yeah, we raise them. We put salsa in the bottle when they're little. They just drink the salsa.
That's a good idea. You got to break them in a little bit slowly. All right, I'm going to call it quits. I appreciate you being on, TJ. I promise I won't beat you up too much over the next few months, but I'm going to beat you up a little, and it'll be fine. And Olivia's probably going to beat me up more than you will anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Hey, when I get Jack on, do you want to come back on the show?
Sure, let me know. Thanks for having us on today. Available whenever you guys want to have us on.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Have a good one.
Have a good day.
See you on the next show. All right, that's it for today. We are on this every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So Central, that's 3 p.m. I think Mountain time is one more hour beyond that. Every Tuesday, except for, I think, the week of Christmas, we're not going to have it. Next week, we have John Dye. He is the American Contractor Show guru that also set up balance claims. I'm really looking forward to seeing John Dye on here. He's going to talk about his big summit that's coming up, and we're going to ask him all kinds of questions. I probably have about 15 questions of my own for him, so be sure to put together your questions beforehand so that we can vet them out. If there's too many, we want to get to yours. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified whenever this gets on and you know when you can pop on the show with us. All right. You want to see it live. It's better live. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you on the next one.